December 7th, 1941. A peaceful Sunday morning dawns over Oahu. The sun rises, painting the Pacific with golden light. Green hills and long beaches bask in the clear, bright sky. A warm breeze whispers through palm trees as the ocean remains calm and quiet. Inside Pearl Harbor, the day begins slowly. This vital American naval base in the Pacific hosts many ships of the United States Navy. Along Battleship Row, powerful vessels rest side by side. Among them, the mighty USS Arizona, its steel body reflecting the morning light. Sailors move across the deck, beginning their daily duties. Some carry equipment, others sweep, while the American flag waves gently above. Nearby, the USS Oklahoma rests quietly. Sailors lean against railings, some chatting over coffee, enjoying the tranquil morning. The strong USS West Virginia, with its tall towers, also prepares for the day. Sailors walk its deck, readying equipment. Sunday mornings are usually peaceful. Many sailors have time off, some sleeping in, others writing letters to family back home. In the ship kitchens, cooks are busy preparing breakfast. The aroma of eggs and coffee fills the air as sailors line up in mess halls. Small boats glide across the harbor, carrying supplies. Seagulls fly overhead. Everything feels calm and ordinary. At Wheeler Army Airfield, rows of American fighter planes sit quietly. Mechanics check engines. Pilots drink coffee, unaware of any danger. Hickam Field is equally calm. Transport planes and bombers stand near hangars as ground crews move equipment. From Da'ir, Oahu looks beautiful and peaceful. Green mountains rise. Towns dot the coastline, and white clouds drift across the blue sky. But far away, in the northern Pacific, a powerful fleet moves through the waves. These ships belong to the Imperial Japanese Navy. 6 aircraft carriers, surrounded by support vessels, sail carefully through the cold morning air. Their mission: a bold and risky plan. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto's secret plan aims to attack the American fleet at Pearl Harbor without warning, weakening the U.S. Navy. On the carriers, crews prepare aircraft for launch. Bombers and torpedo planes are rolled into position, bombs attached beneath their wings. Japanese pilots, in flight suits, walk towards their planes. Some study maps, others quietly wait for the signal to start their engines. Soon, the quiet air fills with the roar of engines. One by one, planes lift into the sky, forming up for their journey. Fighters, bombers, and torpedo planes climb into formation. A large group flying south towards Hawaii. Back on Oahu, the peaceful Sunday continues. Church services begin. Families plan quiet days, some heading to the beach. At Opana radar station, 2 soldiers watch a new radar screen. They are still learning to read its signals. Shortly after 7 a.m., a large signal appears, showing many aircraft flying towards the island. The soldiers report it, but officers mistakenly believe it's American bombers. No warning is sent. Meanwhile, the Japanese aircraft continue their approach, maintaining careful formation above the clouds. Inside Pearl Harbor, sailors continue their normal routines. Some stand watch, others finish breakfast, unaware of the impending doom. On the USS Arizona, a young sailor looks out across the bright, peaceful water. The sky is clear and blue. Suddenly, small, dark shapes appear in the distance. At first, they are thought to be American aircraft returning, but these planes are flying very low and very fast. Alarm begins to ripple through the harbor. As they draw closer, sailors see the markings on the wings. Large, red circles, the symbol of Japan. Confusion turns to terror. Someone shouts a warning. These are not American planes. Within seconds, the peaceful morning shatters. The sound of aircraft engines grows deafening over Pearl Harbor. Sailors look upward as the first aircraft pass. They run to their stations, officers shouting orders. The surprise attack has begun. Only moments earlier, the harbor was calm. Now, the men at Pearl Harbor understand that something extraordinary and terrifying is about to unfold. The morning at Pearl Harbor had started like any other Sunday, with calm skies and quiet water. But that peace was gone within moments. The first aircraft appeared above the harbor, and soon the entire base was awake with the sounds of engines, shouting, and alarms. Sailors ran across the decks of their ships. Officers shouted instructions, and the ships themselves seemed to stir as if sensing the change. The sun reflected off the gray metal of the battleships, now lined with men preparing for action. On the deck of the USS Arizona, sailors moved quickly but carefully. Some ran to their assigned gun stations, carrying helmets and equipment. Others hurried to communication rooms and control centers inside the ship. Officers watched the sky through binoculars, calling out instructions. The large guns of the Arizona were manned, and crew members began the laborious process of loading ammunition, preparing for the unknown. Not far from the Arizona, the USS West Virginia was alive with similar activity. Crew members climbed ladders and moved through corridors. Some sailors assisted injured men or helped secure equipment on the decks. The ship's tell towers and masts cast long shadows across the water, now spotted with smoke rising from nearby ships and docks. Along Battleship Row, the USS Oklahoma began to lean slightly as water entered the hull. Sailors scrambled across the tilted decks, holding onto railings and ladders, helping each other reach safer parts of the ship. Teams moved in organized lines, closing watertight doors and starting pumps to manage flooding. Despite the danger, the crew worked efficiently, showing discipline under pressure. Across the harbor, the USS Nevada made a careful decision to move. The ship's engines roared to life, sending thick smoke into the morning sky. Officers on the bridge guided the massive battleship toward the harbor channel. Sailors on deck stood alert, monitoring the water and nearby vessels. If the Nevada sank, it could block the entrance to the harbor, so every decision had to be deliberate and precise. Small boats began moving across the harbor, carrying messages and supplies. Some transported injured sailors to shore, while others helped firefighters bring hoses and equipment to burning ships. The water was filled with small wakes from these rescue boats. Seagulls flew above the chaos, circling the harbor, landing on undamaged parts of the ships, as if watching quietly from above. On Fourth Island, hangars and airfields were now filled with activity. Pilots and mechanics moved quickly among parked aircraft, inspecting engines and preparing planes that might still be operational. Some fighters were rolled carefully out of hangars, while others were fueled and tested. Mechanics removed tools from the wings. Even in this urgent environment, careful attention to detail was necessary. At Hickam Field, ground crews moved across ramps, carrying equipment and ammunition. Transport planes were checked and prepared for possible flights. Soldiers and airmen communicated quickly, coordinating movements and making sure essential aircraft could be launched if needed. Smoke from fires on the airfields added a haze to the morning light. Meanwhile, the Japanese aircraft continued flying in organized groups above the harbor. From above, the pilots could see the American ships, lined neatly in the water. The sight was striking. The calm harbor, peaceful now, filled with activity, smoke, and movement. The pilots maintained formation, following precise flight paths over the water and islands. Back in the harbor, anti-aircraft crews had begun operating. The large guns on the ships and on shore. Sailors adjusted the heavy weapons, aiming at aircraft passing overhead. The rhythmic clanging of the gun mechanisms mixed with the roar of engines and the distant sounds of explosions. The smoke from damaged ships curled upward, forming dark, twisting columns that stretched into the clear blue sky. Medical teams set up temporary treatment areas along the docks. Stretchers were prepared, and supplies were distributed to treat burns, injuries, and shock. Trucks moved along narrow roads within the base, bringing more equipment to support sailors and soldiers. Rescue teams pulled men from the water and assisted those struggling to reach shore. Even small actions, like passing water or bandages, became crucial in the organized chaos of the harbor. In several places along Battleship Row, damage control teams moved carefully through narrow corridors inside the ships. Their work was methodical. They checked equipment, closed doors to prevent flooding, and assessed structural damage. Every decision mattered, because even a small error could result in greater losses. Sailors carried hoses, tools, and supplies through tight metal passageways, working in teams to support each other. Civilians in the nearby city of Honolulu began to notice smoke rising from the harbor. Some stepped outside their homes, others climbed small hills or rooftops for a better view. The sight of dark columns of smoke above the harbor caused a mixture of fear and curiosity. Some initially thought it was a military exercise, but the persistent sounds of engines and explosions soon made it clear this was serious. Back on the water, the Nevada continued moving toward open water. Despite nearby explosions and the risk of torpedoes, the ship steadily advanced. Officers carefully guided it, ensuring it did not block the harbor or collide with other vessels. The crew maintained focus, ready to respond to any unexpected changes. Elsewhere in the harbor, smaller boats ferried equipment, personnel, and injured sailors. The water was filled with movement. Oars dipping into calm waves, engines churning, and wakes forming behind every vessel. Rescue operations were coordinated with precision, each boat following a specific path to avoid collisions. As the morning progressed, the Japanese aircraft began to move away after completing part of their mission. They circled above the harbor, checking the damage caused. From the American perspective, the threat had not fully ended. The sky was still filled with smoke, and damaged ships remained in the water. Sailors continued to manage fires, assist damage, and rescue crew members. Across the harbor, ground crews and pilots at airfields continued their work. Aircraft were checked for damage, engines were tested, and surviving planes were prepared for any further action. Mechanics worked in teams, coordinating movements while keeping an eye on the harbor below. Every moment was crucial to prevent further losses. Despite the chaos, the discipline and training of the sailors and soldiers became visible. Teams moved efficiently, following orders, and completing tasks under pressure. Firefighting crews worked in shifts, pumping water across decks and extinguishing small fires. Officers communicated constantly through radios, flags, and shouted instructions. By mid-morning, the activity in the harbor had settled slightly. The initial shock of the attack began to fade, replaced by a quiet determination among the men. Smoke continued to rise. Damaged ships floated unevenly in the water, and emergency crews remained vigilant. The morning had been long and challenging, but the work of the sailors, soldiers, and civilians showed coordination and resilience. Across the base, the city of Honolulu remained watchful. Residents saw the ongoing operations in the harbor and along the docks. Some volunteered to help, offering support to medical teams. Others simply observed, understanding that the events of this morning would have lasting consequences. The calm Sunday morning that had started only hours earlier was gone. Pearl Harbor had changed. The naval base was alive with movement, activity, and purpose. Ships, aircraft, personnel, and civilians all played a part. In responding to the unexpected events, the morning had demonstrated the readiness, discipline, and determination of those stationed at the base, even in the face of surprise and uncertainty. By late morning, smoke still rose from damaged ships, but the work of managing the harbor continued. Rescue teams pulled men from the water. Firefighting crews continued spraying decks. Medical teams treated injuries. Sailors worked to stabilize ships. The Japanese aircraft had moved beyond the immediate area, but the effects of the morning's events were visible across the harbor and surrounding areas. The attack on Pearl Harbor had reshaped the calm harbor into a site of organized recovery, emergency work, and coordination. While the first wave of activity had been frightening and confusing, the response reflected preparation, discipline, and determination to continue their duties, even under unprecedented circumstances. By the end of the morning, the first chapter of the attack had concluded. Sailors, soldiers, mechanics, and civilians continued to work together, facing the consequences of a morning that would be remembered forever. By late morning on December 7, 1941, smoke over Pearl Harbor began to settle, revealing the full scale of devastation. Ships lay damaged, their decks crowded with sailors who had fought to save their vessels. Fires still smoldered. The water, once calm, now carried marks of chaos. Oil, slicks, debris, and small boats moving quickly to help. On the USS Nevada, the crew had grounded the ship safely in shallow water, preventing it from blocking the harbor entrance. Sailors continued to hose down the deck while officers assessed damage and organized shifts for firefighting. The ship's funnels emitted smoke, and its gray steel hull was streaked with soot and water from the morning's efforts. Every crew member moved deliberately, following training that had become second nature in moments of crises. Nearby, rescue teams focused on the USS Oklahoma. ships were slowly returning to organized routines. Crew members on the USS West Virginia assessed structural damage and coordinated with repair teams. Firefighting efforts continued as hoses sprayed water over hot metal. Officers communicated through radios and signal flags. The rhythm of disciplined work replaced the sudden urgency of the attack, creating a sense of quiet resilience. On Ford Island, airfields had been cleared as best as possible. Damaged aircraft were moved aside for repair. Mechanics inspected every plane, documenting which could be returned to service and which were too badly damaged. Pilots walked across the tarmac, checking instruments and reviewing maps. A complex ballet of recovery unfolded. At Hickam Field, the scene was similar. Ground crews carried fuel, ammunition, and spare parts. Soldiers and airmen assisted pilots, ensuring surviving aircraft could be refueled and repositioned. Fires from damaged hangars smoldered slowly, adding to the haze. Everyone worked with focus and precision. Medical teams were deployed across the harbor and nearby islands. Temporary treatment areas were established. Doctors, nurses, and orderlies triaged the wounded, treated burns and injuries, and documented casualties. Stretchers were carried across uneven surfaces, and ambulances transported men to nearby hospitals. Civilians were also drawn into the effort, offering support with supplies, water, and comfort for those in shock. This collaborative effort between military and civilian personnel became a defining feature of the morning after. Communication lines were critical. Radios crackled with messages between ships, shore stations, and aircraft. Signal flags were raised along masts and rooftops to convey information visually. Officers on each ship relayed orders, and damage control leaders coordinated with their teams. The harbor had transformed into a complex network of activity, organized under pressure. Across Honolulu, residents observed the aftermath. Smoke rose from the harbor in thin columns. Streets near the naval base were filled with military vehicles, medical teams, and volunteers. The local population, initially uncertain, joined in relief efforts where they could. On the decks of several surviving ships, sailors continued repairs and assessments. Officers held briefings to discuss next steps, ensuring each team knew its responsibilities. The focus shifted from immediate survival to recovery and preparation, critical for maintaining order. The sun climbed higher, revealing the extent of damage. Ships were scattered, tilted, or partially submerged. Smoke blurred the lines between sea and sky. Water carried fragments of wood, metal, and equipment. Oil slicks stretched across the surface, reflecting the morning sun and the chaos that had unfolded. Despite this, personnel moved with discipline and careful attention, stabilizing the environment. Officials on Oahu began planning a larger response. Communications were sent to Washington, D.C. Military leadership assessed the implications, bringing urgency to strategic planning. Civilians continued to assist, delivering food, water, blankets, and medical supplies. Local knowledge of roads and waterways proved essential in moving people and resources efficiently. On USS Nevada, officers reported the ship's status and coordinated with nearby vessels. Crew members managed minor fires, stabilized equipment, and prepared for potential further threats. The morning unfolded slowly, each moment marked by methodical work. All played critical roles. The harbor, though damaged, became a center of organized recovery, with each team understanding its responsibility. By late morning, Japanese aircraft had left. The sky cleared slightly, though smoke lingered. Officers reviewed damage reports. The number of injured and equipment loss were documented carefully. Despite exhaustion, every person remained alert, ready to respond to any further challenges. The attack transformed the island from a quiet Sunday into destruction, effort, and human resilience. Sailors stabilized ships, mechanics assessed aircraft, medical teams cared for the wounded, and civilians supported. The collaborative response reflected training, preparation, and the instinct to act decisively under pressure. By the end of the morning, initial chaos had subsided. Fires burned, ships remained damaged. Officers and crew reviewed plans, assessed priorities, and organized ongoing operations. The harbor, though scarred, remained under American control, a testament to skill, discipline, and resilience. The morning after would be remembered as a time of critical decisions, courageous work, and understanding the event's scale. Their efforts laid the foundation for continued defense of the Pacific and the eventual response. Even as the sun continued to rise over Oahu, the consequences were clear. Ships bore marks of attack. Yet the disciplined response ensured the base remained functional and organized, ready for challenges.